If we accept it for our neighbor, we'll accept it for ourselves. Where are we? Where are we, the people? Africa is always receiving Palestine as a symbol of the liberty.
On a point of order, Chair.
Mr. President,
on a point of order,
please let me finish what I have to say. What?
On a point of order, Chair. I'm here. On a point of order, Chair.
Wait a moment, Honorable Malema.
But this is how it's going on. Are we...
Chair, I'm rising on a point of order.
Honorable Malema.
I'm rising on a point of order. I fully agree. Honorable member is presenting. I agree entirely. But we are in the middle of a discussion of a report. Can we exhaust the report and come back to this motion? Because it's an important motion which cannot be discussed as a by the way. It needs to be a substantive motion where we'll even take a decision as Pan-African Parliament. Yes. So let's have a proper discussion on that motion, not in the middle of the report. I don't know what type of procedure is this, where you can just stand up in the middle of a report and say something completely different. We agree with that motion. We are all here. And we're not going to allow this parliament to adjourn until it has taken a decision on what is happening in the Middle East. But for now, let's exhaust the report and come back to the motion, please.
I agree, Mr. President, on what he just said, but what you don't know that this paper is presented since a year and a half now. A year and a half, there is a motion that nobody wants to listen to. And that's why today we have 60%.
Honorable Mustafa.
I agree with you. We need the day to talk.
Honorable Mustafa, have a seat, please. Now I invite Honorable Julius Malema from South Africa. You have the floor.
Thanks very much, Vice President, and thank you very much, President, for the report. I think our problem starts with the titling of the report, because you call it an activity report. And therefore, by calling it activity report, it means that you are asking the President to come and present the diary of what he has done, where he has been, and all that. And I don't know if that is in terms of the rules and the constitution that constitutes this body, because ordinarily we should be getting the state of Africa through the President. And the state of Africa will then include politics of our continent, the economy of our continent, and the security of our continent. The politics of that state of Africa will, amongst other things, tell us if we are achieving the strategic objective of this institution, or we just talk about which countries we visited and how many days we have spent there and how much we have spent. That is a degeneration. It's not politics. I think that we are forgetting that gathering here, we are politicians. And at all times, we must speak politics on how do we reposition Africa as an equal partner in the geopolitics of this world. So the degeneration of diary times and delegations and money is actually an insult to this institution and to the people of Africa. So I think that as we go forward, Mr. President, we may have to retitle this report and we may have to write it differently. For instance, it can't be a report of 3 months. It has to be a report of your term from the last 3 years. When you got in, what were the resolutions? What was your mandate? Have you achieved that mandate? So it's an incorporation of everything else you have been reporting in between since the election and the new elections. But equally, the President should not hesitate to start this type of a meeting with this type of a report, because you ought to set the tone. You cannot speak at the end. You ought to speak much, much more earlier so that you give the meeting direction and we're able to say, this is where we are, this is where we come from, how do we move forward? I hate a situation where I meet with politicians and we discuss diaries and human resource. We cannot be discussing human resource from a president. We must be discussing politics, and that's why there are cracks. That's why there is no clear explanation of where, if you pardon me, Chair, there's no clear explanation of how far are we with regard to the people of Western Sahara, how far are we with issues of terrorism in our continent, and all of that. Why? Because you think those are not important issues. You ought to narrow yourself down to more technical and administrative issues, and politics take a back seat. If you want to be those types of politicians that are obsessed with human resource, you must know you are failing this continent.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Now we are at the end of a discussion. I would like to take this opportunity to invite honorable, I see one hand. This is going to be the last one hand. Honorable Professor Ali from Egypt.
Shukran.
I thank you, Mr. Vice President. I would like to congratulate the new Bureau and wish them full success in their task, in their new tasks. And we hope that we will be serving the African continent better than we did before. I do have some methodological observations regarding the budget. I do not have an expertise in the field, but let me just ask about the resolutions and the recommendations that we made regarding the committees. There is a recommendation, for instance, that we made in the Committee on Education regarding a single law for the protection of the historical heritage of Africa. Another recommendation to have a unified or a single history book for Africa. And this is important for the identity and the personality of Africa. We don't know what had happened to these recommendations. Has it been submitted to the African Union Commission? Has it been referred to the heads of state? Have we recommended to have these recommendations submitted to our heads of state through the African Union Commission, etc.? So, because we've discussed this matter, and even at the national levels, and we agreed to have a concrete action plan to have a unified history, unified book on history, because if you do not have unified identity in the schools, in the churches, in the mosques, in the media, if there is no unity shown in all these spheres, we cannot have unity or harmony. The other aspect I wanted to raise is about the link between what we do here and the African peoples. As was raised by our colleagues, we need to have a feeling that this parliament has a really major major role to play in, for instance, putting an end to conflicts, to wars throughout Africa. The other observation is about the link of what we do. The mic has been cut off, sorry. So what we do and the Agenda 2063 of the African Union Commission, of the African Union, is there a nexus between what we are doing here and what is done by the African Union under the Agenda 2063? Thank you very much, and I wish you full success.
From Egypt. Now I invite Honorable Roger Kodo to respond.
Monsieur le Président,